Welcome back to Analytical Strategy. Today we are talking about a really fun idea for a Survivor fantasy season, and that is first boots versus runners up. I love this idea and concept and think it allows for a really entertaining and dynamic cast. I think both of these types of players would be really hungry to win the game, as the runners up were obviously so close to the prize they could taste it, compared to those who barely got a chance to get their foot in the door. We'll run through the runners up tribe first, followed by the first boots. But just before we get started, just a really quick reminder to please subscribe to the channel if you are new or you are enjoying the content that Analytical Strategy provides. It takes just a couple of seconds to do so, and it really means a lot and helps the channel push out more videos. Big thank you to all who have subscribed so far, and let's get into this entertaining cast. So let's get straight into the runners-up tribe. So when I was selecting the runners-up tribe, I was conscious of who had played with who on previous seasons. And it turns out a lot of these runners-up had played with each other in Heroes versus Villains. So I have tried to leave a few of these big names out of this particular cast due to this, as if to say Courtney, Russell, Parvati, Amanda, Coach Danielle and Rob were all on the same tribe. This season couldn't really go ahead. That's 7 out of 10 contestants on the one tribe from the same season. So to me, it really needs to be unique and different to anything we have seen before. I've only included 2 of these contestants from Heroes vs Villains. So firstly, we're going to get into the men of the runners-up tribe. And firstly, we're going to be talking about one of these males in the Hero vs Villains cast, and that is Russell Hantz. So to me, Russell is a must-have on this season. We haven't seen him play in US Survivor for a very long time, and it is only a matter of time before we see him return to the game. He played 2 extremely strong strategic games, which in turn has put a target on his back for the rest of his Survivor career. Russell is also probably the most polarizing player in Survivor history. Some people think he is terrible at the game, as he is unable to form the right social bonds to get the jury votes, but some say he is one of the best players of all time, due to how dominant these first 2 strategic games were, particularly in Survivor Samoa. I personally think he played one of the best losing games ever in Survivor Samoa, and probably would be one of the top 3 alongside Boston Rob in Survivor All-Stars and Dom in Ghost Island. And there's without question that Russell has changed the game. You can't go into a returnee season and have contestants be so fearful of you that they have to throw a challenge to get rid of you and be a bad player. That to me just doesn't make any sense. I think he is a really good player, and he has matured a lot since his last outing on the show. And I would be keen as to see if he can get another opportunity to turn these poor couple of previous performances he had around. So alongside Russell, in one of the best losing games ever, we have to include Dom from Ghost Island. He is a one-time player, and he drew Wendell for the win before Laurel tipped Wendell over the line with her winning vote. That really is the ultimate runner-up, and again, another must-have on the show. It would be absolutely amazing to see a Dom and Russell alliance in action if they were ever on the same tribe. The amount of strategy and flashy big moves these 2 could do together would be pretty amazing to see. Dom is going to be a massive target if he ever returns, but he is definitely a player I expect to see play again in the coming seasons. Whether that be in a runner-up season or a second chance season, I think Dom would be one of, if not the first to go on the list to get the call back to play again. So up next, we're going to be discussing the runner-up of Survivor South Pacific, and that is Coach. So Coach is one of, if not the best character to have ever played on Survivor. And if there is someone that rivals Russell, Dom and Boston Rob for the best runner-up game ever, Coach is well and truly up there for his performance in South Pacific. Coach, honestly, more than anything, is must-see TV. His personality and characteristics are a producer's dream, and I'm sure that we will get another opportunity for Coach to come out and be the warrior that he is in a future season. Coach and Russell are the 2 players from Heroes vs Villains that I selected, as I think there are more one-time female players that I would like to get the opportunity to play again that were runners-up, in comparison to those who have already had multiple attempts to play the game. The dynamic between Coach and Russell again would no doubt be a highlight of this season. So that leads me to our next contestant, who also has a close relationship with Coach, but this time in Survivor Tocantins, and that is the knowingest know-it-all in Stephen Fishbach. Easily the best 0 vote finalist in Survivor history. Stephen and JT were one of the most dominant duos we have ever seen on the game so far, with exceptional strategic and social play, which resulted in them both making the final 2. Unfortunately for Steven, he was sitting next to one of the most likeable contestants that had ever played the game in that point of time, with some contestants such as Brendan aiming to even get JT to the finals to win the game. It would be awesome to see Steven and Coach reunite as well, to see if the Dragon Slayer and the Wizard can reunite their warrior alliance and proceed in the game together, or whether it would put a target on their backs from the get-go. Either way, I think Steven is a must-have in a runner-up season, and is always a threat down the road if he can escape the first sector of the game. So the last male runner-up spot I'm going to be selecting is Dean. Yes, DK Chillin'. So Dean's game started off slow, but it got better and better each and every episode he was in. Dean was able to rep all of his bling in the final tribal and make big moves such as replicating the fake legacy advantage and nullifying Janet out of the game. Unfortunately for Dean, he came up against a really strong social player in Tommy, and he was unable to get the win. But given his performance, I think he will come back, and he should do pretty well overall in most seasons he would be cast in. So they are my 5 males in the runner-up tribe, and they are Dean, Fishbach, Coach, Dom, and Russell. And that leads me to the women of the runner-up tribe. And the first woman I'll be discussing is Chrissy. So Chrissy is one of the most intelligent people that has ever played on Survivor so far. She played a really strong game for the majority of the season, with a little bit of a rocky finish before making it to the final 3. She was able to win 4 immunities, which is a record for a female contestant, and she was able to solidify tight alliances with JP and Ryan throughout the entirety they were in the game together. She is a really good player, and I think she has what it takes to do well again if she gets the chance to return. And someone who played a pretty similar game to Chrissy, I think, was in Survivor Worlds Apart, and that is Carolyn. So I was really surprised and disappointed when Mama C didn't get enough votes to participate on Survivor Second Chance, as she was the only white collar to make it to the end, and she played a really strategic game. It was also quite surprising to see her only get 1 vote in the finale, and that was from Sierra, especially after Shirin made such a big pitch that Carolyn had played the best game. She was able to infiltrate alliances, and she could successfully play a hidden immunity idol when she was in danger, and she was just a really great player overall. I hope she gets another opportunity to play, and I think this type of season especially could be built for a player like Mama C to excel. So the next woman I'll be discussing played a pretty different game to Mama C and Chrissy, and that is Twila from Survivor Vanuatu. So Twila is great TV, that is for sure. While she had this blunt and aggressive personality, she was really a pretty decent strategic player. She was able to figure out when she was clearly on the bottom of this all-women's alliance, and use Chris to flip the whole game to benefit her, and put her in a better position to win the game. But it was a combination of this betrayal to the women, along with swearing on her son's name to proceed further in the game, is what cost Twila the win. So if she were to return, she would need to sharpen up her social game to have a chance at the title, but it would be really entertaining to have Twila back either way. So following Twila, we're going to be talking about Jaclyn. So Jaclyn appeared in a Blood vs. Water season, and one thing I really like to see is people who performed well on these seasons compete without the reliance of their loved one. Jaclyn and John were really joined at the hip for the vast majority of their time together in Survivor San Juan del Sur, but they were ultimately the most powerful couple within the game this season. They positioned themselves really well to make many key moves and be the centerpiece of different alliances. Jaclyn played a big role in big moves, such as eliminating Jeremy and Josh, and again, I would really like to see how she would go as a solo player in the game. And that leads me to the final woman, and therefore the final member of the runners-up tribe, and that is Hannah. So I really like Hannah, and I really think she is an underrated player. She has a really strategic mindset for the game, and was aware of her position and the way people perceived her. I think she was really unlucky not to receive any votes in the final tribal and to be swept by Adam. So I think she needs to adjust her game slightly to alter this people's perception of her as this neurotic, anxious individual, and she can dominate as a strategic threat as she has the ability to do. If she was able to find her feet and scrape through the first few votes in a returnee season, I could absolutely see Hannah going deep again. So they're the 5 women I've chosen. They are Hannah, Jaclyn, Twila, Carolyn, and Chrissy, and they join Dean, Fishbach, Coach, Dom, and Russell on the runners-up tribe within this runners-up vs. first boots season. And that leads me to the First Boots tribe. So for the First Boots tribe, other than one really obvious selection, I didn't include any multi-time players. I don't think a Sierra or a Natalie, for example, fit the theme of a First Boots season due to their success in the game previously. So contestants who have only been voted out first and have had no other placement will be included. So similarly, we're going to start off with the men, and the first man we're going to be talking about is Zane. Yes, Zane. An absolute must-have on a First Boots season. Locked in, throw away the key. Zane is playing if this season were to ever happen. Zane was able to have an alliance with every member on his tribe, but then he played a little bit too hard, a little bit too fast. He made an alliance with every single person on his tribe before telling them to vote him out for his performance in the challenge. His strategy was a little wacky, but thinking outside of the box is generally a really good sign of a good player in Survivor. I would love to see Zane back in action and to see what he could come up with if he got his foot in the door. So the second male we're going to be talking about in this First Boots tribe is Darnell. So I really like Darnell, and I think he was in a difficult situation being on this Brawn tribe with such big personalities. Within Darnell's only episode of Survivor Go Wrong, he was pretty funny, with a key moment in him using the ocean as the bathroom to the amusement of his tribe. He then unfortunately dropped his tribe's goggles, which made him a target, and due to these big personalities, found himself with his torch snuffed later that night. I think Darnell has a lot of potential, and I do hope we get to see him return one day. And another player I'd really like to see come back is Pat from David vs. Goliath. So Pat technically isn't a first boot due to being a medevac rather than being voted out of the game, but he was still the first member to leave the game in Survivor David vs. Goliath. Pat was another bossy tribe member who still technically could have been targeted for elimination first, but ultimately it was a back injury on the way back from the first immunity challenge which cost him his spot in the game. As Pat's game ended really before it commenced, and Jeff stated he was the key reason for the theme of David vs. Goliath due to his story, I think Pat absolutely deserves a second chance in the game, and hopefully we'll be able to see him play again one day. So following Pat, we're going to be talking about David Samson from Survivor Cagayan. So to be honest, I'm not a huge David fan based on what we saw from him on his appearance on Cagayan, but there were limited selections to choose from in the male side of the First Boots, whilst I felt the female First Boots were pretty strong overall. David made a really questionable decision by attempting to eliminate the strongest member of his team in Garrett from the get-go, focusing on the latter stages of the game before the game really even commenced. As soon as this decision was made, David's game was done, with Garrett able to round up the numbers to get him out. If he were to return, I hope he could keep his ego in check, as he is obviously a really intelligent guy, and if he could learn from these mistakes, it would be interesting if he could adapt and if his game could change. So the last male we're going to be talking about in the First Boots tribe is Ronnie. So we didn't get to see Ronnie's personality shine at all in his appearance on the show, as he was too fixated in being in game mode rather than in social mode. Ronnie is a successful poker player, and when he is at the table, he is a great time and a laugh to be around. Ronnie made a lot of mistakes in his appearance on Survivor, and I think he's the type of person that can turn this around if he were to get another opportunity to play again. He's a really smart guy, and socially he has the ability to be a really strong player overall. So if Ronnie can put all of the game stuff aside early on and focus on building strong relationships, I can see him doing quite well in this type of season. So they're the final 5 for the males on the First Boot tribe. They are Ronnie, David, Pat, Darnell, and Zane. And up next, we're going to be talking about the 5 females on this First Boots tribe. As mentioned previously, I actually thought the women who were First Boots were quite difficult to choose from overall. I didn't think I would struggle to leave people out when selecting the First Boot side of this season, but the women were actually way harder than I anticipated. Without further ado, the first woman I'm going to be talking about is So from Survivor Worlds Apart. So similar to quite a lot of the First Boot cast, has a case of playing too hard too early. The move with Joaquin to select the deceit box, and then So to be the spokesperson to state they selected a neutral box, was probably one of the most obvious lies we have so far seen in Survivor. But putting that aside, I think in general So has a lot of characteristics of a good Survivor player. She's charming, she's smart, and she's sociable. It is just whether So can put these positive attributes together and use them well without playing too hard too early, which would be ultimately the result of how she would do in this type of season. So following So, we're going to be talking about Marisa from Survivor Samoa. So Marisa's instinct proved correct when she called out Russell Hantz for his shadiness and strategic play. Even Russell himself would consider Marisa an above average player due to this forecast which a lot of the Samoa cast were unable to see. This would end up costing her the game, but it would be interesting to see how those kinds of natural instincts come into play in another season. If she can learn not to vocalize these instincts directly to the player she wants out, she could be someone that could do very, very well overall. So another player that I think could do really well overall is Nadiya. So to me, Nadiya just looks like she could win the game. Now, that may be because her identical twin won, but still, I think she could have a really good shot of doing well. Nadiya was a target for her appearance on The Amazing Race, and for mistakenly calling her tribemate Josh one of the girls, which cost her her spot in the game. It would be interesting to see what would have happened if Natalie and Nadiya started on opposing tribes. There is a good chance Natalie could have been one of the first boots of this season, but overall I am very interested to see how Nadiya would go in a non-Blood vs. Water season. That leads me to another contestant that I would really like to see play again, and that is Francesca. So there's not too much to say about Francesca, except if there ever is a first boot season, she will be the first to be called. Being voted out first twice is not a record that anyone wants to have, but it makes you an automatic inclusion for this type of season. I would actually really like to see her play without Philip on her tribe. Going into her second season with a contestant they have a lot of friction with was a recipe for disaster, and ultimately made Francesca eat a rock for dinner that very night. First boot season, Francesca is a must-have and would be great to see play again. So up next, we're going to be talking about the final woman within this First Boots tribe and therefore the season, and that is Queen Reem. So Reem is different to other First Boots as we were still able to see her character develop throughout the season due to the Edge of Extinction, and this is part of the reason why she is such a popular First Boot. Even for those who hated the Edge of Extinction, Reem was a saving grace that made the whole endeavour worth it. Her attitude unfortunately caused her to be voted out first, but we still got to see Reem on our screens every week, telling it like it was at every turn. Even beyond her dynamic personality, she proved to be a survivor, staying on the Edge of Extinction for 32 days. So there are no questions, Reem could hack it in another season. And that is the final contestant. She will be joining Francesca, Nadiya, Marisa, and So as the women on the First Boots tribe, alongside the men in Ronnie, David, Pat, Darnell, and King Zane. And that rounds out the First Boots versus runner-up season of Survivor. Overall, I think this is a great concept of a season and allows for a very interesting cast. I think this gives the opportunity for a First Boots season to actually be realistic. As alone, I personally don't think there are enough names to make it a really appealing cast. I also think what adds to this concept is we get to see a lot of crossovers in relationships from their original season, such as So vs Mama C in the battle at the first tribal. We also have Marisa vs Russell, again who have history with that first vote out. I just really like this idea and concept, and hope it would one day play out. If I had to fathom a guess at a winner, I would say there would be a top three of Mama C, Darnell, and Chrissy, being able to fly under the radar a bit compared to the bigger names of a Dom or a Russell type character. What do you guys think of this type of season? Is there anyone you would like to see that I missed? Please put a comment down and put down your winner's prediction. Thank you very, very much for watching, and please remember to subscribe if you are enjoying this content. This is Analytical Strategy, signing out once again, and I really look forward to seeing you on the next one. Bye for now.